How can you reduce overwhelm? As the CEO of the Focus Bee and having worked with many entrepreneurs and business owners around this topic of reducing overwhelm, I feel that this is a topic that we can really go deeply in this episode. Here I will share 7 methods and techniques that you can use to support you to reduce overwhelm if you're going through a phase in your life where you're feeling particularly stressed and overwhelmed. One thing to keep in mind is that when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, it's because we have unprocessed thoughts. A lot of thoughts happening at the same time that we don't finish and we don't process, and that they keep bugging us and taking up all of this internal space. When this happens, this leads to overwhelm. So here are the 7 methods that you can use to help you to avoid this feeling of overwhelm and to reduce it significantly. The first place to begin is context switching. The recipe for pure overwhelm is to switch and multitask all day long. If you do this every single day, going from your emails to writing that proposal to then suddenly going and doing the laundry to picking up your phone to not taking any breaks, it is not surprising that you're feeling overwhelmed. Instead, we want to shift to compartmentalizing. So we want to compartmentalize instead of context switch. Compartmentalizing means having blocks of time where you're focusing on one thing, whether it's the proposal you're writing, or answering all the emails, or doing some chores in the household. And by compartmentalizing it, this leaves room for your brain to put all its focus and attention on that one activity instead of having all these different windows open in your own mind. Think of it as a computer. If you just have one tab that you have open, maximum 2, your computer is very efficient. If instead you have 100 tabs open and 100 different software open, the computer starts to crash. And it's exactly the same with our own brain and our own capacity. If you have too many tabs open at once, you get overwhelmed and even some of the time get close to burnout, which is an extreme form of overwhelm. So instead, we want to avoid context switching, work on all the tasks that are similar together in one big pot, in one big time block. And this is called often batching all the tasks that go together, and single tasking and taking breaks between different projects. If all you did was clear compartmentalizing with breaks in between, this would already reduce the overwhelm. The reason in today's society overwhelm is so predominant and so is burnout is because of all this concept switching, especially as so many of us are working from home. Then we're not only context switching within our own work, but also between work and our private life. So it's not really a surprise that overwhelm is so strong. So maybe think about it for yourself. What are some things that you can start to put together and put into one category and dedicate time to, and then pause and then work on another? And how can you put these habits in place? The next element is to think about breaks. I was mentioning it right now. This ability and need for us to take pauses and breaks isn't optional. It's something that we are deeply wired for and that we need for ourselves to feel good. If you know about the ultradian rhythm, this is a natural biological function according to which we work best and perform best for 90 minutes, single tasking ideally, and then have a 20 minutes break and rest. This is optimal for performance, for focus, for our own inner resilience, for our energy levels. Pretty much everything comes from respecting this ultradian rhythm. 90 minutes of work, deep work, or batching different tasks, and then 20 minutes break. And if it's something that you can't put in place for work reasons, if you can't take 20 minutes off, then even just having a 5-10 minute break is better than not taking any break at all. Respecting this ultradian rhythm, taking breaks, taking pauses, going for a lunch walk just after your lunch. Again, even just 5-10 minutes is better than no time at all. This will support you to feel less overwhelmed. I've worked with several clients where all we did was this compartmentalizing, so single tasking and not context switching, and implementing one break in the morning, one break in the afternoon, and a lunch walk, and they reduced their overwhelmed by 70%. So these are things that we can all put in place, but sometimes within the chaos and urgency of our lives, we get caught up in everything and we forget that there are these very simple, straightforward methods that we can put in place to help us to reduce our overwhelm. Because when you do this, your body functions more effectively, and overwhelm isn't just in our mind, it's also within our body. By taking breaks, by going for a walk, this supports us to be more calm and grounded and to reduce overwhelm. Then we want to think about space. And space, there are two elements to this. There is the mental space and there's a physical space. When it comes to the physical space, it's looking at things like dividing, if you're working from home, having a very clear physical space where you work and a clear personal space for your private home. And if your flat or your home can't accommodate separating these two spaces, then it's creating little rituals around how you start and finish your work so that you give yourself this clear mental space of, these are my working hours, now I'm done. Then go, for example, for a walk at the end of your working day. By creating these little habits, this can help us to create this separation between work and our personal life. But these are also some things we can put in place when working from an office or a co-working space. Having clear rituals around how we start and finish our day creates this mental space, because it's a moment of the day where you check in with yourself. What are the 3 main outcomes for today? You write them down. And at the end of the day, you check in with yourself. How did I progress on these outcomes? Simply by brainstorming, writing it down, putting it through as outcomes, this helps you to be more focused, be more grounded, and to not feel like so many things are happening in your mind. If you know David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, his very first step is capture. And the reason capture is the very first step is because if you don't capture it and put it all on paper, then you don't know what is going on. We're not meant to keep everything in our mind. We're bound to forget things. This leads to overwhelm and stress. So linked to this idea of space, we want to have a separate space, create some form of separation between the physical environment for our work and for our personal life. We want to create rituals around how we start and end the day, and capture, put everything down on paper or on Notion or on your Remarkable or on your phone, but somewhere, so that you have everything classified, organized, and dumped on there, so that it doesn't take up so much space in your own mind. This is absolutely fundamental when it comes to reducing overwhelm. Then we want to go from being too perfectionist to being more compassionate. We want to choose compassion, we want to choose progress over perfection, embracing a mindset of good enough, and also maybe using Parkinson law, so giving yourself a given amount of time to finish tasks. I feel that if we want to be overly perfectionist and do everything perfectly, this takes up a lot of space, a lot of time, and what can then happen is we have lots of started projects sprouting around and we haven't completed them or finished them, and this is once more a huge cause of overwhelm. Instead, we want to start a task, finish it, or finish a big part of it, a milestone, and then do the next. So not multi-starting, no context switching, and also when we start something, let's try and finish it. Let's choose the progress over the perfection so that we can have that mental little tick, well, at least that's done. Maybe there was a better solution, maybe there was a better idea, but at least now it's done and dusted, and then you can focus on the next activity. And so this doesn't take up as much mental space in your own mind. Important following element is boundaries. And by boundaries, I don't just mean the boundaries you set towards other people, for them not to disturb you when you're working, for instance, but also the boundaries that you set for yourself. If you decide you want to work within a given time range, then maybe let people know, but also for yourself, don't overdo it. Having worked with many entrepreneurs and business owners, they surpass the boundaries they fixed for themselves. If they say they'll only work till 6 or 7, it's not uncommon for them to continue working late within the night. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if it's a boundary that you set for yourself, especially if you're going through a phase where you want to privilege and prioritize your own well-being, then being respectful and mindful of these boundaries can support you with reducing overwhelm and feeling calmer and feeling more grounded. And this can help you to feel like you have a bit more space, and also that you can trust yourself along this process. Because if you put in place boundaries that you respect, then you start to build this inner trust. And overwhelm often comes from also not really trusting that we will deliver on everything. So we keep everything in our mind and start to feel stress about it, to push ourselves and force ourselves to deliver, when in fact, if we just trust that things would naturally unravel and we will take the action, we don't need to constantly pressurize ourselves with it 24/7. Inner trust, therefore, is a great quality to develop if you are working on reducing your overwhelm. Another important element that you can keep in mind when it comes to boundaries is having a not now list. Deciding what some things right now in your life, they are not a priority, and you just park them, you put them on a backlog. Here, a bunch of things I will do at one point, they are important, but I'm putting them away for this month or until the weekend, and you write them down and you put them aside. This is so you're creating, again, more mental space. When it comes to having a not now list, it makes me think of the difference between postponing and procrastinating. Postponing and procrastinating aren't the same thing, at least not in my definition. Procrastinating is knowing that you have one or two big important tasks that are impactful, meaningful activities that you are not doing, and there's often fear behind this. On the other hand, postponing I often see as an asset if we do it correctly, and this is postponing some urgent, semi-urgent activities that could be done soon, but they're not the big important ones. What I often choose to do is to postpone a bunch of small urgent things, that email that I need to answer, etc., for the rest of the day, for the afternoon, so that I can focus on the deep work in the morning. So I'm postponing urgency to focus on important. What we often do is the opposite. We procrastinate important and focus on urgent. This is an important distinction, because I fundamentally believe that if we learn to put our focus and attention on the deeper, more meaningful, more important activities in our life, and that we're able to compartmentalize the urgent ones and deal with them all in one go, this reduces overwhelm. Overwhelm is often when we're doing all the nitty-gritty, all the fast, urgent things all at the same time, and in the back of our mind, we've got these important big blocks that we're not dealing with. So again, not surprising that we feel overwhelmed. Lots of little things happening, and in the back of our mind, all the big things that we're not doing. Versus focusing on one big thing at a time and then dealing with all the little things a bit later in the day or in the week, depending on what it is and how it works. So it's for you to explore how you can start to compartmentalize, postpone a bit the urgent activities so that you can focus on the deep, more meaningful activities. Now, we're approaching the sixth tip here, which is focus, this ability to single task we mentioned earlier with compartmentalizing, and being able to prioritize focused, deep work. This is healthy for our brain, it's healthy for our business and career, and we feel better and more fulfilled. What I've realized is that people that are overwhelmed, when we go through a phase of overwhelm, it's often because we are always in this shallow work. It's what I was mentioning just before, always in the urgency, always in the shallow work, and we're not in that focused, deep work. When we do this, overwhelm goes away, because we need to put all our attention in one direction. And when we do that, this calms the mind because it has a clear target and it's not dealing with a million different windows open at the same time. Even if it's a challenging deep work activity, even if it requires a lot of focus and a lot of energy, it is still preferable for your brain than dealing with a million fires that is trying to put out all at the same time. I would challenge you to maybe look at how much time do you dedicate to deep work and how focused do you feel during the day. And generally, the more you can increase the focus level, often correlated with single tasking, you might want to use a Pomodoro, 25 minutes or so, just working on one activity. And then the more you do that, the less you are stressed and the less you're overwhelmed. So looking at this correlation, how much focus during the day versus the overwhelm, and seeing that when you're more focused throughout the day, this also means you're more present a lot of the time, and then the overwhelm decreases. Wonderful feeling to be focused and not stressed and overwhelmed. Linked to this concept of focus, creating white space in our calendar. Time block, not just for your breaks, Here and there, if you can't during the day, then in the evening, an hour or two for just white space, reflection, gratitude, going for a walk. This opens up your mind to brainstorm and to process a bit of the information that you've had, because we deal with a lot of information every single day, and having white space is fundamental for us to process that information. This also means that if you're going for a walk, you might not want to listen to a podcast or music from time to time at least, because this will help you to process what you're dealing with and process your emotions. And last but not least, energy. Obviously, overwhelm is lack of energy, or it depletes our energy, and we want to prioritize energy management over time management. When we're going through a phase of overwhelm, we're looking at everything from a time perspective. Can I squeeze this in? Can I squeeze this in? We often have this sentence or belief, I don't have enough time. By the way, I would challenge you to stop using that sentence, because you're building this belief of lack of time, and that isn't serving you with overwhelm. Instead, we want to think of energy-wise, can you do your deepest work in the morning? Can you take that lunch walk? But also maybe having a small brief meditation or breath work practice, because this helps to fuel the body. As we mentioned, the overwhelm isn't just in our mind, it's also in our body. So if our body is feeling calmer, more grounded after meditation, after spending some time outside in the forest, in nature, all of this will support high levels of energy and help you to decrease this overwhelm. It also helps you to balance your nervous system, so your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are balanced, and therefore your overwhelm will decrease. Anything you can do to maintain high levels of energy, having a gratitude practice, time for contemplation, some form of exercise, maybe a bit of yoga, all of these things will help your body to feel better. The worst thing you can do is probably to just sit the entire day. This releases a lot of cortisol in the body and makes the body feel very stressed. So if you want to avoid this feeling of overwhelm and stress, get up during the day, go for a brief walk, have a stand-up desk, but sitting the whole day will increase and add to the overwhelm. So these were the 7 methods that you can use to help you to reduce overwhelm. Brief recap, we first look at compartmentalizing over context switching, batching all these things together, and single tasking. Then breaks, the importance of having breaks, because this makes a huge difference to our own energy and also how we process information throughout the day. Creating space, having different physical spaces, but also capturing and writing everything down. And then choosing this progress over perfection, embracing this mindset of it's good enough, using Parkinson law so that you finish things within a given amount of time and you don't have all these open windows all of the time. Boundaries, clear boundaries, this ability for you to respect your own boundaries, create inner trust, have a not now list, and choosing postponing over procrastinating. Focus, being focused and having deep work during the day, which then helps you to reduce that overwhelm because all of your brain is focused on one specific thing. And energy management, choosing to value your own energy and to manage your energy through walks, breathing, time in nature, gratitude, small practices here and there. It doesn't have to be phenomenal. Getting enough sleep, that's a big one. All of these things add up and will help you to decrease the overwhelm. And you might want to also think about, what are some of your patterns when it comes to overwhelm? Are there certain times of the month or the year where you have a tendency to get overwhelmed? What can you do to anticipate that? Are there certain situations that make you feel particularly overwhelmed? What can you do when you know those situations are coming up? How can you be mindful of it and create more space? Because we often have similar patterns. So this might be an extra little nugget to keep in mind if you're struggling with overwhelm. I hope this has been useful for you. I am thrilled that you are here and joined me for this episode. If you're new to the channel, say in the comments below, and please subscribe, leave a comment or question. I read every single one of them. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. This would mean the world to the show and the podcast and help me to continuously grow and produce this type of content. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.